All right. It's 10:45 in New York. It's all kinds of times all over the world. And I see that Bettina is still heroically with us from New Zealand, where it must be the middle of the night. But good for you. And welcome to those who are just joining us now for our second session today. We had a wonderful first session with Lydia, who's had to leave the meeting, but it has been recorded. Welcome to all of you who've just joined. And it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce a very interesting philosopher to you, someone whom we've met only recently, but have, I think, begun to know in a certain way quite well. There's an expression about old friends meeting for the first time. And I kind of feel that camaraderie with Bala. Professor Balaganapathi Devarakonda is the head of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Delhi, or as we say in the US, the chair. I've always wondered why these two great nations divided by a common tongue choose such different nouns to represent the leader of the department. There seems to me to be a huge semantic difference between chairs and heads, but anyway, I prefer the English. Using that body part seems more appropriate to me. But anyway, he is the head or the chair, if you like, and a scholar of tremendous breadth and depth, as I have recently learned. I know that Shanti, you've met him previously in India, yes, and that's part of the connection. And if Patricia's with us, I think she also has met Bala. But in any case, we, as Vana earlier mentioned, we got in touch with Bala. He approached us and we had a dialogue about organizing an online conference. And again, one of the very few silver linings of the COVID cloud has been this ability to meet, to migrate some of our work online. And so thanks to that, we indeed, and thanks to Bala, who convened the first group, he actually assembled a very interesting group of Indian philosophers, and we delivered, Vana and I then delivered the very first online APPA certification program back in late April, early May. I think this was quite successful overall, and we in the West have been waiting many years to see what form philosophical practice would take once it rooted in India. I mean, India has been for us one of the great treasure houses of philosophical wisdom for the world. And so much philosophy produced in India over such a long expanse of time and such a great and enduring civilization has made us curious as to what would happen when Indian philosophers got hold of philosophical practice and what they might make of it. And now we're beginning to see the very, very first fruits of an answer to that question. So without further ado then, let's welcome, we can call Professor Devarakonda Bala. I think it's easier and more succinct. So Bala, welcome to our meeting, and please share with us your thoughts on philosophical practice in India.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lou. Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you for that online course that we had together. And Vana, thank you so much for being there and helping us in that completion of that wonderful course that you have organized. And thank you for the kind introduction as well. Good evening, friends. Evening to me, but good morning to you all. Probably good afternoon, I don't know. Yeah, Vana, Rick, Lydia, and of course, I haven't met Shanti Jones, but we corresponded quite well. And yeah, I see her there, and then Patricia as well. Thank you. And I have my own Indian friends, Vijay, Vikas, Mithali, Banashri, and yeah, many more. Thank you so much for being there. Yeah, I don't know how to begin, but first let me confess one thing. I'm sorry, I'm not going to stick to the title that I myself have given. I thought of talking about philosophical practice in India, from a wider perspective. Now I limit myself to like some reflections. That's all. So this is in fact a part of the book that I'm trying to write, and I just tried to develop certain thoughts that I had regarding Indian philosophical tradition and try to see it in consonance with what we would call philosophical practice, what we are calling philosophical practice now in the world. So that's the attempt that I tried to make. So it's not a comprehensive kind of one that I'm going to do. Um, yeah, before I begin, like I'm immensely benefited by Lydia Anna's wonderful lecture, stressing the importance of meaning, judgment, and tragedy. How do you look at the world? How do you look at the life? This is important because the contemporary times, like in the present time, we are in the transition period. Some of the countries in transition period, probably some of the countries may think that they have already managed COVID-19 pandemic. In India, I'm in Delhi. That's still very bad. The crisis is still increasing, still on uprising. People are trying to manage themselves, keep themselves calm, you know. And these are the times where, in fact, the very questions of meaning of life is very important. And that's how I got in touch with Lou. You know, when during, I think this is during March, I mailed him and I said, we have to respond to COVID-19 pandemic, and how do we do that? He said, we are ready to do whatever is required. And that's how this wonderful relation, academic solidarity, that's what we have to build among the people, among the scholars, among the academicians, as well as the practitioners, the solidarity that we have to build from looking across the continents and looking across the countries and trying to help the people. That's how we got in touch, and that's how we moved together. We traveled together in this philosophical counseling journey, which was very fruitful to me. Definitely, I really thank Lou for that journey. Uh, anyway, I'm not. Let me say a few things about what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. As the title of my talk says, I'm not going to look at the historical evolution of philosophical practice in India, which is impossible for me because it spans more than 3,000 years. So I don't want to venture to take up such kind of an impossible task. So though the title certainly tries to hint that, I'm not doing that. So let me confess my limitations. And I'm also, I will also try to avoid as much as sweeping generalizations, because most of the times what happens when somebody looks at his own tradition, one tends to make sweeping generalizations saying that everything is philosophical practice kind of one. So I would try to avoid such kind of a position. Similarly, I would also try to avoid being dismissive of one's own tradition, looking at the contemporary practice and say that, yeah, this doesn't exist in my tradition. So I don't want to be too, I don't want to make too much sweeping generalizations kind of one. And at the same time, I don't want to be dismissive of saying that, no, there is no philosophical practice as we are doing it in the contemporary world now. No, I don't want to do any of them, but I want to balance myself in between. That's the effort that I would put now. And I would also, what I would be properly doing now is to present a distinctive but a restrictive picture of philosophical practice in India. Distinctive, I'm saying it is definitely distinctive from other cultures and other nations, but it is restrictive in the sense that I cannot look at the whole of the tradition and present it. So that's my limitation that I have, and also we have the limitation of time as well. What I would also be doing is I would be limiting myself to classical Indian tradition, though I thought of bringing contemporary or Western contemporary Indian tradition as well into the discussion. But then I understood that within an hour's time, I will not be able to present it accurately. That's why I limit myself in this presentation to classical Indian tradition. And you should apologize me for one thing. I would be using Sanskrit terms because without using them, I cannot get into classical Indian tradition. So please excuse me for that. But I will try to use them in a limited way. Yeah, this is a kind of explorative analysis that I'm doing here. I'm not trying to be completely descriptive kind of one because it doesn't fit into the model that I'm trying to do now. So I would be doing a explorative analysis kind of one. Yeah, these are my basic platform that I have to specify. So having made this platform for myself, let me go further. There is one more important point that I have to mention. Like, let me begin with what is philosophical practice in the present context of this paper that I have to specify. Only then I can go further, because unless I define what I'm trying to address, it would be impossible to look at that in the classical Indian tradition and say something meaningful. If I can borrow Lydia's terminology. Uh, Philosophical practice, I believe, this is my belief, I am open to correction. Philosophical practice, I believe, is rooted in conception of life itself. Okay, and this conception of life is different in various cultures. And variance in philosophical practice is due to variance in the conceptions of life by each culture, expressed through thoughts and language, and in the form of which form the form of worldview that we try to explicate. So that is how, if we are looking at philosophical practice, what I mean is you have to understand what is the conception of life that the particular culture has provided, and only if you can understand that, you would understand what kind of philosophical practice that they are doing. And that is what makes the variance that we see among various cultures. And also we would find many similarities as well. I'm not trying to be exclusivist and say that no, there are no similarities at all. So this is the broader kind of framework which I propose to understand philosophical practice, because as we all understand and accept, you cannot find similar kind of philosophical practice in the classical Indian tradition, obviously. So that is how this definition is required, so that I can go further to say something meaningful. Having said that, no, there is something very interesting that I found in Lu's work, one of Lu's work, where he says philosophy comes forward to help in times of crisis. I think it's in Plato, and Plato, not Prozac. I think that's where I found. I don't remember the exact line because I was reading it in the morning. I mean, morning to me. So the crisis that I'm seeing, like with, for example, the present times where we are situated now, we all face a kind of a crisis situation, and the crisis all the time forces us to look for solutions. Because if we confront the crisis, we don't remain calm. We try to look for the solutions. And this looking for the solutions, search for the solutions, always pushes us to locate the sources of the solutions. And these sources of the solutions can be external as well as internal. And these external sources could be tangible sources. And for example, if we are looking at the world around us in the COVID-19 pandemic, there are many external sources that we would find as a solution to the problem of COVID-19 pandemic. Similarly, we would also find sources which would be internal. And these internal sources are very important to me. And these internal sources could be the self. I'm talking about the self of the individual, and also the tradition. Tradition and the self are the ones which are very important. And in fact, self which is rooted in the tradition is very important to me to look for solutions, when we are looking for the sources of the solutions of the crisis. And that's what makes us to look at the tradition. And tradition in general, any tradition for that matter, in general tries to conceptualize life itself. Okay. Every tradition, you look at ancient Greek tradition, Thales or whoever, they were trying to conceptualize life itself and see how they can explicate further from that. And tradition conceptualizes life by defining the relations of self with the other. The other could be nature or non-human other or human other or cosmic, spiritual, whatever, social, political, whatever modern institutions that we have evolved. And this is how I look at the tradition. Tradition tries to conceptualize the life and also try to define the human relations, uh, um, define the relations of human being with the other. Human life in this particular way, human life is a combination of relations between self and the other. How are these relations conceptualized? Differ from tradition to tradition, because some traditions may look at conceptualize this relation in terms of materiality, and some traditions may conceptualize it in terms of spirituality, or sometimes I would also believe that how these relations are conceptualized differ during various phases within the tradition. So this second point is very important to me. Uh, Even within a tradition, during various phases of life, conceptualization of life in terms of the relation between self and the other differ. That's what I would be talking about within Indian tradition now, after some time, and very soon. Conceptualization of these relations within human life. Uh, sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, please carry on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Conceptualizations of these relations within human life are the ones which help us to come out with conceptions of metaphysics and understanding of epistemology and axiology. Okay. So this is how I look at, I prepare my own picture for going forward into Indian tradition. Now, let me say a few things about how or what is philosophy and how is it understood, so that I can go further on the practice of philosophy within Indian tradition. Philosophy, yeah, here I am tempted to read uh, one sentence from Lewis' work from Plato, not Prozac. Philosophy is regaining its lost legitimacy as a helpful way to examine the world around us, as our universe supplies us with new mysteries faster than either theology or science can reconcile existing riddles. Bertrand Russell characterized, I quote Lou, Bertrand Russell characterized philosophy as something intermediate between theology and science, a no man's land, exposed to attack from both the sides. But this is Lou who is saying this. But the upside of that apt assessment of the downside is that philosophy can draw on strengths from both sides without having to absorb the dogmas or weaknesses in either. No, this is a very interesting observation that you have made, because there are two sides. No, on one side we have science, theology, and the other side we have science, and we think that philosophy is in between a no man's land. But he says philosophy can take sources from both of them and try to resolve issues, concerns of human happiness. So this is one interesting thing that I thought I should read out in this context when we have to address what is philosophy and how is it going to help us. We tend to understand philosophy as a life-changing one, because a transformative one, because as I explained, I understand philosophy to be addressing human life in its relational aspect. If philosophy is addressing the relational aspect, then obviously there is a possibility of transformativeness and life changing indigenous, which is to be agreed and accepted upon. And similarly, philosophy also works for problem solving. If it sees a problem in the materiality, and if it sees a problem in the spirituality, it tries to address them and try to reconcile them. And philosophy is in general understood to be love of wisdom or way of life. I think in both these senses, it is we can easily understand philosophy to be a practice. It's doing philosophy. When I say that, let me take the help of one French philosopher, Pierre Hadot, Pierre Hadot, Pierre Hadot, who has written a work, Philosophy as a Way of Life. Okay, he says philosophy was a way of life, is a mode of existing in the world which had to be practiced at each instant, and the goal of which was to transform the whole of the individual's life. No, if you want to practice it, you have to live in each instant of life, and also the goal is to transform the whole of individual's life, and that is how philosophy is seen as a way of life. No? And this is a very interesting definition that we get from in understanding philosophy as a way of life. And if we accept it to be a way of life, then obviously you're practicing philosophy. Uh, yeah, there is another very important aspect. When I say, philosophy as love of wisdom, uh, I don't mean, or I'm not understanding it to be limited to epistemology alone. It's not just an epistemological enterprise, and that is how it goes beyond epistemological concerns and tries to reach out to a more broader and more practical aspect of way of life. And this is where, again, I quote Pierre Hadot, who says, philosophy tries to help to be in different ways. It helps us to be in different ways. No? It's not mere epistemological enterprise, but it helps us to be in different ways. So it is not a passive being. Okay, I'm saying being in the world is not a passive individual being in the world. So to be in different ways is an active notion. Okay, mutually affecting the world and self and the other, mutually both self and other mutually affecting each other. And this is a multidimensional be that I'm stressing here. And this is where I bring in the notion of co-creativity. When I say we are all practicing philosophy, what we are trying to do in its relational aspect is to interact, self trying to interact with the other. Other is any other, like um, an institution, artificially constructed institution like society or family or polity, or self. The other could be the other individual human being, and other could be non-human world or nature as well. But what is happening in this relational aspect and in this uh, individual trying to be in the world, to understand it to be an active participation, what happens as a consequence is co-creativity. It is not that we just affect or we get affected by the nature, by the other, but in the process, what happens is a kind of co-creation of the individual. And this co-creation is not just co-creation of the external world that is given, okay? It is simultaneously the co-creation of the self as well. And that is how the space for self-improvement, self-analysis and self-improvement comes into picture, which is very important. And that's what I consider to be philosophical practice. Then each one of us, not just academicians, I go with Lou in another place. He says, he makes this statement that philosophy, unfortunately, because of this academia, got limited. Otherwise, it is more broader and it is wider than the academic concerns. I think I have this quote Yeah, he says in his Plato Not Prozac, philosophy was originally a way of life, not an academic discipline, a subject to be not only studied but applied. It was only in the last century or so that philosophy became completely consigned to an esoteric wing of the ivory tower, full of theoretical insight but empty of practical application. Right. Exactly. I strongly accept this position. And that is where philosophical practice, practicing philosophy was a co-creative enterprise of each one of us. And beyond the academia, each individual human being, whoever is looking at the world and trying to participate in its evolution. And that is where philosophy is a way of life. And philosophy, of course, is a theoretical enterprise, and it is also a practical enterprise, and it is a productive enterprise. It comprises of all these three aspects of human life. Yeah. That's how it comprises of all these, all these three enterprises, theoretical, practical, as well as productive aspects. Now the question is regarding practicing, the very question regarding practicing philosophy, I feel is misplaced. Misplaced, at least in one sense that I can explicate now. It is misplaced because philosophy, obviously, if it encompasses all the aspects of human life, theoretical, practical, and productive as well, then if you're asking, if you're questioning whether philosophy is practicable, it's like a completely a misplaced kind of a question to me, you know? Because obviously we are even if we are theorizing, we are theorizing the practical aspects of human life into which individual is co-creating, with which individual is participating and co-creating. So that is how the question regarding whether philosophy is practical itself is a misplaced question to me. And uh, as I say, the concepts and categories with which people think deeply affect their lives. If this is how it is a way of life. If you start thinking, and if you start thinking through concepts and categories, and it's not that you're just thinking, they also deeply affect your life. If they don't affect, then you're not deeply thinking, right? If that is the case, philosophy definitely, no, anybody who is a deep thinker is affecting his life. And that's how there should not be any question on whether philosophy can be practiced. Having said that, let me move a little further in trying to, as I said, like if I am trying to locate philosophical practice, what I am supposed to look at is conception of human life. And it is the conception of human life which is different to different cultures. That is the variance of the philosophical practice that we look at. Okay, this is the proposition that I have developed so far. Now, let me move further and try to address the issue like how is human life conceived in classical Indian tradition. Okay, let me reach out to classical Indian tradition and see how human life is explicated there, so that on the basis of that I can go further and try to show various ways in which human life or philosophy is practiced and human life is looked at within Indian tradition. Uh, yeah, basically, as I have already mentioned, like thoughts and language are rooted in lived experiences of life, right? How do you, when you philosophize, whatever you're doing is an enterprise of thought which is done in language. And if that is the case, something that is very important is every language and every thought, okay, every aspect of language and every aspect of thought are rooted in the lived experiences of the people. That is how the concrete lived experiences of the people who are living in that particular moment gives them sorry. Okay, yeah, I think I can go ahead. Yeah, the concrete lived experiences of the people give them the language that they have developed and also the thoughts, that particular thought that they spontaneously get. And these two aspects are very important in the development of conceptualization of life, and through which they try to practice their philosophy. And this is how life viewed as life in classical Indian tradition is viewed as an interaction between psychophysical and spiritual being, psychophysical and spiritual mechanism, which is inside the individual, with the physical, natural, and cosmic universe. The spiritual being and the cosmic world outside are very important in Indian tradition. And the link between these two, through the link between these two, is the life of the individual is conceptualized. Okay, so that's how individual is understood more as a cosmic being in the, at least in the Vedic and Upanishadic tradition. And later times it changes. Okay, that is how what they try to say is both the sources and the constituents of life are inclusive of not just physical but spiritual and cosmic as well. Okay, both the sources and the constants of life are understood to be possessing these three aspects: physical, spiritual, and cosmic. The conception of life is more in terms of holistic, trying to showing that there are binaries and trying to say that you have to go beyond binaries and you have to go beyond contradictions, because the life, the world around us is accepted, and later on it was also sometimes in at least some of the philosophical systems it is rejected. And that is how they say one has to go beyond the contradictions. And but the approach that they have followed is integrated approach of all the aspects of human being and also all the aspects of human life. And what they say is this integration of these aspects of human life and aspects of the human self are to be harmonious. And this is the kind of picture of the life that they develop. And in fact, this we get clearly in Vedic tradition, where conceptions like sahavasa, sahakara, and sahabhoga were developed. Okay, I'll try to translate them. Sahavasa is living together, and sahakara is helping each other, and sahabhoga is enjoying together. Okay, enjoying together. So these are the notions which were strongly enunciated in Vedic tradition with respect to the conception of life, which is very important to note. There is a move towards completeness all the time that is stressed, and there is a move towards perfection. And it's not just perfection in the sense that there is a complete totality that is available in toto for the conception of the individual. But what is stressed is a kind of alignment in the human life. As we understand, when we say, when we talk about alignment, what we mean is alignment is not just alignment of parts, okay? Alignment of each one of the parts in consonance with the other, so that there would be a kind of harmony that gets established, which makes the whole mechanism function in a better way. That's what is alignment. Because we hear this word wheel alignment with regard to the four-wheelers that we have. But if we are applying it to the human being, what is it that we have to understand is this. So in this way, but whatever I said so far, at least to some of the scholars outside India, looks not so appropriate, because we heard, or you might have heard, people dismissing Indian philosophy, saying that it dismisses the external world around us, and it is completely world negating kind of one. This criticism Indian philosophy has been facing since its initial translations in the European languages. But actually, this is not completely true. I'm not saying it is completely false, but I'm saying it is not completely true as well, which is very important to be noted, because Indian tradition looks at the world in terms of two lenses, Shreyas and Preyas. Okay, Shreyas are the ones which are good for the individual, and Preyas are the ones which are pleasant to the individual. Okay, and it is not that Preyas, which means which one enjoys, which is pleasant to the one, or completely rejected. The enjoyment of the pleasant was also stressed, and that is how you have best texts of at least sexual enjoyment, like Kama Sutra, is produced in India. It's not dismissive of the empirical aspects of love as well. No? So that is to be understood in something that is in consonance. Oh yeah, let me explain this. Shreyas. Shreyas is basically something that is good to the individual. And when Shreyas is explained, it is always explained in terms of spirituality, where, like they said, it manifests, Shreyas manifests in compassion, daya, love, prema, patience, which is termed as sahana in Indian tradition, and empathy, which is understood, which is termed as sahanubhuti. Okay, uh, enjoying things together in the world, and tyaga, which is like a spirit of sacrifice. So this is how, like, something that is empirical is also stressed, and there is always a stress. There is always what is envisaged along with stressing what is empirical is to uh, develop a kind of equanimity in understanding and trying to enjoy them. That's what is stressed here. So material outlook is never completely rejected in Indian tradition. That's what I mean. There are two other concepts that we come across, like Abhyudaya. Okay, there is a concept called Abhyudaya that is enunciated in Vedic tradition, which in fact promotes empirical or this worldly development of the individual. In consonance with these two, there is another kind of distinction that we find in Indian tradition in terms of pravrutti marga and nivrutti marga. Pravrutti marga is proactive and trying to actively participate in the world and develop it. And nivrutti marga is a withdrawal from the external world and trying to make an inward journey into the self. Okay, both were always uh, explained very well. Okay, only thing is, what is stressed at the end is nivritti marga. Okay, but by that we cannot try to generalize Indian tradition to be dismissive of worldly life that we have, because, for example, if I have to say this, like, all of us have to die. You know, we are mortal beings. If we have to die, at the end we have to meet the death. We cannot say that we are living for the death, right? We cannot generalize and make a statement saying that we are living for the death. No, we are not living for the death. So that distinction has to be made and understood. And that is how these are the various ways of thinking and modes of living which are very important, which are holistic and integrative and harmonious within Indian tradition. Um, this makes me to move further at least there are three phases that I have identified, and I'm trying to, as I said, this is just a draft, and also it is an explorative analysis that I'm doing. I may be wrong. I'm subject to correction. I have no problems at all in correcting myself because it is at the draft level. Uh, there are three phases that I looked at. One is Vedic and Upanishadic phase. The other one is epic and Upanishadic phase. The third one is philosophic phase, which is Darshanik, I call. Because in India, philosophy is called Darshana. That is how, in general, it is understood and accepted, widely accepted term in Indian tradition for philosophy is Darshana. So Darshanik phase. I'll show you these three different phases and try to explain how philosophy is practiced and how life is looked at, and what is more majorly stressed in this, and how can you look at philosophical counseling, if at all we are trying to look at philosophical counseling and them. Okay, this is what I would do, and with that I would stop. Okay, let me go further and try to explain this. Uh, Let me do my own experiment, right? I hope you don't mind me doing this experiment. Yeah, the Upanishadic, Vedic and Upanishadic phase. I hope most of you, if not all, understand that Indian tradition begins with Vedic tradition. Okay, if you're looking at classical Indian tradition, it begins with Vedic Vedas, and there are four Vedas that are mentioned, and Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda. These are four Vedas that we have, and each one of these Vedas are also are divided into at least two sections. One is called Karma Kanda kind of section where action, okay, is stressed, and the other part is called Jnana Kanda where knowledge acquisition is enunciated. Okay, so if we look at this particular phase of Vedic and Upanishadic times, life was seen in terms of cosmic order. Okay, cosmology is very important to Vedic and Upanishadic conception of life. Okay, harmony with the cosmic order was most important thing. Okay, in this regard, I am reminded of the question that Massimo, I believe, Massimo has asked to Lydia a few minutes back, saying that meaning is internally generated, not in cosmos. Okay, that's what he said. It cannot be in cosmos. But here in Indian tradition, cosmos is very much stressed, and meaning is attributed to those actions where the individual in his own life tries to relate himself to the cosmic order, which is called Rita. Rita is the cosmic order that is well explicated in Vedic texts. Okay, and being life in consonance with Rita is very important, and that is how you derive meaning to your own life. So that is a stress there, and harmony with the cosmic order was stressed. And as I mentioned, both Karma Kanda, where the first part of the Vedic text, where what is right course of action is discussed, and the Jnana Kanda, which is where what is right knowledge is stressed, both were addressed through cosmology. Okay, and that is how in Rigveda especially we find something called Rudra. Okay, which tries to praise Lord Rudra, where the individual is understood to be identified with various aspects of the nature, and Rudra is also identified with various aspects of nature. And what is stressed here is the need for going or transcending beyond these natural aspects that are there and try to reach the cosmic order. Okay, so this is what is stressed, and that is how. And also similarly, we find in Upanishads, the concluding portions of the Vedas, Upanishads, we find questions like Koham. Koham means who am I? Okay. In Indian tradition, this is a very important question because inward journey begins with this kind of a question. How do you relate yourself? As I stressed, human life is a relational kind of one, and how you relate yourself to the other largely depends on this question like who am I? Okay, this question takes you make an inward journey, and also it helps you to relate yourself with something that is outside you as well. And that is how this koham, who am I, is very important, and kutaha jnanaha, what kind of knowledge is also very important. And both are discussed in Upanishads. So here in this Upanishadic tradition, Vedic tradition, if you are looking at, there is a seeker and there is a method as well. Okay, and the method is an inner journey, and the move is towards self-improvement. Okay, the seeker that we find in Upanishadic tradition as well as in Vedic tradition, of course, Upanishads are part of Vedas. the seeker makes an inner journey, that is the methodology, and the endpoint that is looked at is self-improvement. Okay, but this self-improvement is possible only through relating it to the cosmic order. That is how it is understood. Okay, and the seeker gets. This is another important aspect, Lou. Uh, the seeker gets united with the counselor. Okay, in the process of seeking, okay, the seeker of the knowledge, or seeker who is attempting self-improvement, becomes one with the counselor. Okay, he himself would be counseling the self, and that is where the Upanishadic tradition is unique, and that is where the stress on cosmic order is very important for them. Okay, that's why I said the conception of life has to be looked at to understand what kind of philosophical practice that particular tradition tries to explicate. And the methodology that is stressed, and the aspects of methodology that are stressed, or like swadhyaya, they say swadhyaya is self-study. You have to study. It is your own inner journey. It is your own, if not inner, it is your own journey. So your own study, self-study, swadhyaya is very important. And swadhyaya has various aspects which are called Sravana, Manana, and Nitidhyasana. Sravana is listening to the things around us, and also Manana is reflecting on them, and then Nitidhyasana is meditating on them. Okay, only through these steps that you can reach out to your own self, and you can also reach out to your own inner sources of the self, and this leads you to relate yourself to the world outside you. This is the kind of picture that we get of philosophical practice and life in Upanishadic, Vedic and Upanishadic times. Let me take you further to another important and interesting phase in Indian tradition, which is epic and Puranic phase. Okay, so as I said, in Vedic and Upanishadic phase, cosmic order is stressed. Rita is stressed there, and living in consonance with Rita gives meaning to the life. But when it comes to epic and Puranic tradition, the Rita is slightly marginalized, and what was promoted is dharmic order, dharma. This is what often you hear, right? When it comes to Indian tradition, the very well discussed, well debated concept in Indian tradition all over the world is dharma. What is dharma? Okay, and this move from Vedic to Puranic or epic tradition is move from stress on cosmic order to dharmic order, dharma, concept of dharma. And life here in this epic and Puranic tradition that we have, the life is oriented towards dharma, and dharma is discussed and explained as a duty and as a precept and as a normative concept as well. Depending on the context, dharma is understood and explained variedly. And also dharma is the one which helps us to understand what is right course of action, because this is what is all the time important to human beings. And if we are addressing that, dharma is the one which tries to give an answer in this epic and Puranic tradition. And how would one know it? No, I think in one of Lou's works I was reading, I found this to be the primary question, like, what is the right action? It doesn't end with that. No, knowing the right action is not sufficient. And how do you know the right kind of action? And when do you know the right kind of action? How to know the right kind of action is very important than uh, 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 discussing about right action itself, right? And how should one follow that right kind of action? Because in all the times, it may not be possible for you to follow the right course of action that you think is appropriate for an individual. So, and also where to do what? What are the exceptions that we find in the human life in following certain principles? So these are the ones which the concept of dharma tries to explain and explicate. And as we understand, like there are four purusharthas that are stressed in Indian tradition. Purushartha is basically the human goals. There are four goals of the human being: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma is what I'm discussing now, and artha is understood to be the wealth or wealth of all sorts, and kama is the desire, okay, desire of all sorts, not just sexual desire or something, okay, desire of all sorts, and moksha is the liberation, okay. These four are stressed to be the aspects of or purusharthas, basically, the goals of human life. And in consonance with them, which means when I mentioned that these are four goals, which means dharma, artha, and kama are very much related to this world only, and only moksha is the one which talks about the other world. But even then, some people tend to be dismissive to Indian tradition, saying that it is world negating kind of one, which is wrongly footed criticism. And there are certain kinds of ashram dharmas, other sorts of dharmas which are also stressed, which are important in this context. Like there are four stages of life, okay, called a student life and a family life, and then living to the forest, okay, forest life, and then the last phase is called sannyasa, renunciant. Okay, these are the four stages of life that are stressed, which again are have to be in consonance with dharma. And there are sadharana dharmas. There are many sorts of dharmas that are discussed. That's why I'm saying at times you would find dharma to be stressed or explained in terms of a precept, and sometimes dharma is discussed as a normative concept. Sometimes dharma is stressed as a deontological requisite for human life. Here in this Puranic and epic phase, the life is understood more in coordination with dharma, as I said. And here what is stressed is empirical aspect of the life with social, political, ethical, religious, and spiritual aspects. Okay, all these five or six are stressed very well here. And here also you would find a seeker and a method. And the method is learning from it's not merely an inner journey. When it comes to Puranic and Upanishadic period, the learning is not just through an inner journey, it is through the other as well. So the relational aspect with the other opens up in Puranic and epic tradition. And this is where learning from the other is important, and less importance is given to the inner journey. Inner journey is not rejected, but inner journey is given lesser importance. But what is stressed more is learning from the other. And even here, you would find a kind of self-improvement to be the goal, and also problem solving as well, because dharma is supposed to be solving the problems of the human life. Okay, so that is how the social aspects, political aspects, ethical concerns that we confront in our human life would be addressed through dharma, and that is how, along with self-improvement of the individual, problem-solving aspect of individual human life is also stressed. And the seeker and the counselor are different here. As I said, in the Vedic and Upanishadic times, the seeker himself transforms into a counselor, like self-counseling kind of sort of thing happens there. But when it comes to epic and Puranic times, the seeker and the counselor are two different ones. And that is how, as I mentioned, like there are four stages of human life: student, and a family man, and then a person who goes into seclusion, into forest, and then renunciant. Okay, here the renunciant and the family man play the role of a teacher, a counselor to the other sections, other people of the other groups. So that is what is very important here in this context. Let me take you to the other third phase. I hope I have some more time, right? Lou, can I?
Well, Bala, I just sent you a message to ask you if you can wrap up in 5 minutes because we want to have 15 minutes for Q&A, okay, if you please.
Yeah, I'm reaching the last phase that I thought I should explain and then stop. The third phase that I see is Darshanika, which is a philosophical phase that we talk about in Indian tradition. As I said, there are two terms that are popular with respect to philosophy in India: Tattva and Darshana. Okay, Darshana says to see. Darshana comes from the root dhru, which is to see. How do you looking at the world? Okay, because when you see, which means basically perceiving. When you perceive, there are certain things that come in front of you. Okay, but Tattva says Tattva means basically the fundamental science of the fundamentals. Okay, philosophy is understood as an instrument that helps you to see, and also as something that deals with the fundamentals. And that is how, if we combine these two, the sense that we get is perceiving the fundamental through the obvious. Okay, there are for the perception, obvious things are given, but merely getting satisfied with the obvious things is not enough. So we have to go deeper into them. Okay, deeper to reach the fundamentals, and that's how these two labels that were used in Indian tradition for philosophy in terms of tattva and the darshana help us to understand. When I look at this third phase, what is very important to me is heterodoxy. Okay, more than orthodoxy, what interests me more here is heterodoxy. Heterodoxy is the one. Okay, most of you might have come across this work of Amartya Sen, Nobel laureate, who has written a book, Argumentative Tradition. Okay, so where he tries to stress that Indian tradition is basically rooted in argumentativeness, and it is all aspects of life are argumentative, and there is an active participation of people from various sections in this argumentative tradition. And when I say this heterodoxy, we understand that orthodoxy is rooted in Vedic tradition. This is how it is understood in Indian tradition. Like orthodoxy is rooted in Vedic conception. And even during Vedic times, there were parallel non-Vedic strands which tried to be interlocutor to the Vedic tradition, Orthodox Vedic tradition, okay, which is very important to look at. In fact, I mentioned the four goals of the human life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. And people say that the moksha, the liberation aspect, is a result of the heterodoxy's interaction with the orthodoxy. Similarly, there are three ashramas that I have mentioned: stages of life, student, family man, and then seclusion, person who goes into seclusion, into forest. And the third one is sannyasa, who is renunciant. People have argued saying that this renunciant is basically included into four stages of life because of the heterodoxy. So heterodoxy played a very important role in understanding or transforming the conception of life that we had during Vedic times as well as epic and Puranic times. Here in this Darshanic or philosophical terms as well, I see a kind of shift with respect to understanding the seeker as well as the method. Okay, this is what is important to me in the philosophical practice. Seeker is transformed here. He's no more a passive, but he's seeker here is not a passive seeker in the sense that, see, for example, in epic tradition or even in Vedic tradition, the seeker accepts the authority of the Vedas and then tries to get the knowledge of the Vedas. Okay, even if you look at the discussion that we find in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna gives knowledge to, gives guidance to Arjuna. There is a kind of hierarchy which is accepted by Arjuna, okay, and he tries to accept the knowledge that is given by Krishna without much interlocution in a different kind of way. But this heterodoxy in Darshinic context, philosophic context, made the seeker an active participant. Okay, he is not a passive seeker, but he is an active participant of the development of the knowledge. That is how I said the conceptions of life and the conceptions of goals of life were added by this introduction of heterodoxy, interlocution of the heterodoxy. And the seeker is an active seeker who interrogates and rejects as well. Okay, if not satisfied with the proposition, he would even reject it. Okay, that is not possible in the Vedic and Puranic tradition. Only in philosophical tradition that is possible. I would give an example of that. Okay, one and also one who proposes alternative. So the seeker here is an active interlocutor, and he also gets dissatisfied with what is given, and he rejects if he doesn't find it to be useful to his own understanding, and he proposes alternatives. Let me give an example, wonderful example that I discovered recently. Like I was, most of you are familiar with Buddhist tradition, right? Rick is here. Rick has written many books on that, and Lou has written on that, and most of you have written works on Buddhist tradition. I always wondered, why did Buddha begin with dukkha? Dukkha, suffering. Okay. And the other thing is, why did he talk about anatma? And why did he talk about impermanence or kshanika? Okay. Three statements that you find in relation to Buddha are sarvam kshanikam, sarvam anatma, and sarvam dukkham, which means everything is impermanent and everything is non-substantialist, no soul, and everything is suffering. Okay, why did he choose these three to be his basic premises? That's what I wondered for a long time. Then suddenly it struck to me that there was a question posed in Vedic tradition which says, what are the essential characteristics of reality? Okay, there is a quest for understanding the reality, ultimate reality, whatever that was conceived in terms of Brahman. And the question further probes into the characteristics of this ultimate reality called Brahman. And then the concept that comes out in Indian tradition is Sat Chit Ananda. Okay, Sat Chit Ananda. Sat Chit Ananda is the one which characterizes the Brahman, ultimate reality, in the orthodox Vedic tradition that we have. And now let me explain why did Buddha chose Kshanika, impermanence, anatma, no self, and then dukkha. Okay, so I try to relate it, like relate the characteristics that were stressed by Vedic tradition to ultimate reality. Sat, Sat means the reality. Okay, and reality is always understood in the Orthodox tradition to be permanent. Okay, and Buddha takes the opposite standpoint. He rejects it. That's why he said the heterodoxy did not just interrogate the given, it also sometimes rejected it and proposed an alternative. That is the wonderful thing that we find in with regard to heterodoxy in Indian tradition. So from Sat, he reached Kshanika, okay, impermanence. And from Chit, Chit is self. And self is also understood to be something that is permanent, okay? And from Chit, he reaches Anatma. He says there is no self at all, no? Everything is non-substantialist. So non-substantialist perspective comes out because of that. And then the third one is Ananda, Sat, Chit, and Ananda. And he rejects this conception of Ananda and starts with Dukkha and tries to explain the world. Okay, So the ultimate reality now is completely a transformed one, a completely different kind of one that he has posited, giving importance to the empirical, immediate, existential, experiential life of the individual. So this is the kind of conception of life that heterodoxy has contributed and enriched within Indian tradition, which is very important to note. Even here, the method has changed. Method in this particular sense is both inner as well as outer. That's why we find meditation being a part of Vipassana meditation. Most of you might be, I think there are practitioners as well here of Buddhist meditation. It is both inward and outward journey that is stressed as a method here. And it's not inner, not in the sense of, Vedic and Upanishadic tradition, Vedic and epic tradition has stressed. This is another very important aspect. It is because of this change that Buddhism has brought within orthodoxy of Indian tradition. A new area has emerged in Indian tradition called psychology. I think the beginnings of psychology in Indian tradition have to be located largely, if not all, largely within Buddhist tradition. Okay, because this inner self for him is not similar to the inner self, inner journey that he stressed is not the inner journey that is in consonance with Vedic tradition or with the Puranic tradition. The inner journey for him is a psychological journey. That is how you would find most of the psychological aspects coming up within Buddhist tradition. Of course, I am not denying the importance of Sankhya and other yoga systems where psychological aspects were stressed, but Buddhism has enriched them and contributed richly to the development of understanding of philosophical practice. Yeah, I think I should stop here because I'm warned long back, but still I crossed my limit. Yeah, basically what I try to look at is, if at all we are trying to understand philosophical practice in a tradition, my kind of explorative analysis would ask me to define what is human life, because within the conception of human life, the practice of philosophy seeps in. And if we accept that proposition, there are three different phases that I have identified within Indian tradition. The earliest one being Vedic and Upanishadic, and then epic and Puranic phase, and then the third one is philosophical phase or Darshanic phase that I have mentioned. And in all these three phases, there is a seeker, there is a methodology, but this continuously transformed. The practice of philosophy has always given space to new modes of thinking and new ways of living, which is very important to understand. Thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity that you have given me. And thank you all for the patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bala.
I hope it could make some sense.
It's a very rich presentation, very long and actually complex tradition in which this new form of philosophy is now returning home in a way. So we'll be really interested to see how it plays out. For your edification in general, Bala is also going to guest edit a future issue, forthcoming issue of our journal on basically philosophical practice in India, with a number of his colleagues contributing to it. So as Vana mentioned, our forthcoming, our issue that's in the press now, to which some of you here have contributed, thank you, is an issue on how philosophy can help during a global pandemic. And there's been a huge response. This will be a double issue and the first in our history. Bala's contributed, Vana's contributed, Shanti, Rick. I'm just looking around the rooms and seeing, you know, there Alexander. There are quite a few of you here today, and Andre. So this is really important. But following that, Bala is going to guest edit another really important issue, on philosophical practicing. And I hope, Bala, in your introduction, you will explicate also some of these terms so that we can profit from your orientation. Please, we have a few minutes before lunch. If anyone wants to ask Bala a question, please put up your hand or type it into the whatever you're familiar with doing, okay? If you know how to put up your virtual hand. Okay, Andre, that's the real hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the real hand. First of all, thank you so much. What a beautiful experience, Bala, to see your presentation. I'm really grateful for that. I have one just tiny clarification question, and then another more interesting question to ask you. The clarification question is, you mentioned at a certain point sources and contents or contexts of life, and you said physical, spiritual, and cosmic. And I do not understand the difference between spiritual and cosmic there. So that's just a clarification thing. The other more interesting question is, how in the Indian tradition do you resolve the tension between individual self-realization, in the sense that Lydia mentioned before? You know, I for one take on from Jean-Jacques Rousseau the conception of human nature, according to which each person has their own particular nature, which is in fact essential to them being the person that they are. You know, there are aspects that we internalize and we can get rid of them, and there is no problem of that, but there is a kind of essential constitutive part of that person being the person that they are, and we need to respect that. So how do we solve the tension between that approach and this whole cosmic oneness and an integration with a cosmic harmonious order sort of thing? How do we resolve that tension?
Thank you, Andre, for that interesting question. In fact, I thought I would say, please don't ask questions. You are free to comment, but no questions. But now that you have posed, I cannot stop you after posing the question. Yeah, good. Whenever we talk about spirituality, we are limiting to the individual, individual self, the self that is rooted in the body, okay? Embodied one. But when we are talking about cosmic, we are trying to go beyond that. That is the difference between spiritual aspect and cosmic aspect. That's why I said, when we are talking about the constituent of the constituents of the individual, we do talk about spiritual aspect. But when we talk about world in general, okay, nature in general, or life in general, that's where we bring in cosmic aspect. Okay, that is the difference that I see. But this is interesting question, like how do you reconcile the tension between the uniqueness of the individual and at the same time positing a cosmic order? No, yeah, this is what Upanishadic, Vedic and Upanishadic tradition, early Indian tradition tries to do, and it doesn't see a contradiction in positing that. Okay, let me explain it. It doesn't posit that to be a contradiction. It doesn't see it to be a contradiction, because the individual's uniqueness is always preserved and protected, but that will not stop it from being a part of the cosmic order. Okay, as it is said in Indian tradition, like unity in diversity. Diversity is preserved, and the uniqueness is preserved. And that's how we have one of the philosophical systems in India called Vaiseshika, which Vaiseshika, Nyaya and Vaiseshika are two systems. And Vaiseshika stresses the importance of uniqueness of the individuals. And in fact, even in Vedantic tradition, we have Visista Advaita tradition, which is propounded by Ramanuja, which stresses the importance of the uniqueness of the individual, but it says, yet it has to be a part of the cosmic order. If I have to take the rude and crude example of human body, each of the parts are unique, yet they're connected and harmoniously connected. No? And at no period of time, your one hand, when it is working, your other hand would come in conflict with it. Okay, there is a kind of harmony which is built. And where do you locate it? Do you locate it in the hand, or do you locate it in the consciousness? Do you locate it in the brain? Yeah, it's difficult. But there is a kind of harmony, and the tension that we see always gets resolved if you look at the metaphor of human body. Thank you. Thank you for this interest.
Okay.
That's a very helpful metaphor. And just very quickly, Lou, just saying, please, when your book is out, let us know. You already have a reader here, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bala, if I may, we have time for one more question from Mihail. I should also mention, and I neglected to in introducing you specifically, that Andre and others, you may want to know, and I only recently discovered this, that Bala actually did his PhD thesis on Thomas Hobbes. Notwithstanding this matrix of Indian wisdom in which he's so deeply embedded, he reached across, to British empiricism and to the English Civil War. And I'm also, as he knows, a big aficionado of Hobbes. So we found this, I guess it's karma, right? Bala, must be a karmic connection. And Hobbes turns out to be one of the linchpins. So Bala, there's one more question before we break for lunch, and this comes from Mihail in Romania, and he has an interesting question for you. He asks, what are the basic questions, Mihail asks, what are the basic questions we can use to attract people into contemplating these three dimensions of the self that you have talked about, to draw people into this traditional Upanishadic or Vedic way of thinking? Are there questions that we can ask, to Westerners to draw them in?
Oh.
How can we attract people? How can we bring people into this contemplative tradition, from the West?
That's a very deep question to, in fact, I have to reflect on within myself to give an answer. Yeah, basically, the question that I have mentioned in the discussion, like, Koham, who am I, is the primary question that pulls you, into the self, okay? And then it forces you to take up the journey. You cannot stop after asking this question. You cannot stop with one answer. You have to go further, okay? Because as Descartes has rejected each one of the propositions initially and then reconstructed them, similarly, you will not be happy with one question like, if such a kind of question is posed, like, who am I? This is the beginning. And this would take us a long way. And there are works like, there was a saint called Ramana Maharshi in South India. And also there is a great saint of the modern period by name Nisargadatta Maharaj, who has written a book on I Am That, okay? And these two books are written in English. So this book that I'm referring to, I Am That, in fact, I can show you the book. This would be very useful, okay, with regard to the questions that we can encourage and we can also ask, so that the seeker would start delving on them and go deep into self. But otherwise, I was also struggling with this, like when I started talking about philosophical counseling in India, I had to articulate it in an attractive way, right? So how do I do that? I was struggling with that. And suddenly it came to my mind, and then I was successful in making it interesting. Like I asked this question to the students, that, uh, uh, do you do you want good life? Everybody says yes. And then I would ask, do you also want happy life? Everybody says yes. And then, do you also want a kind of right kind of life? They say, at least sometimes, right, right kind of life sometimes. But all of them would definitely say that, yeah, they want happy life, they want good life, they want right kind of life. Then when I ask them, what do you mean by good life? Then it starts getting shattered. The question and the answer both both start getting shattered. And then what is happy life? Then they will not be able to locate it. No? What is happy life for them? And then what is right kind of life? I don't know. Is it as per the Constitution of India, or it is as per the law, or what? What do you mean by right kind of life? And then the problem accentuates triply when we have to something, locate an area where we find an action or a life which is a combination of good, happy, and right. And that's a blurred area. You can never locate that, right? The intersection of good life, intersection of happy life, good life, and right kind of life is the one which we are supposed to locate, and which is always impossible to locate. And that is the journey that we always take up in philosophical counseling as well, right? I hope Lou would agree with me that all of us, all our journey in philosophical counseling is to help the client understand what is good life and what is right life and what is the happy life for him. And that is how we cannot give a suggestion to him saying that this is the kind of right kind of life, because he has to discover himself.
Yes,
We can
Bala, with certain important exceptions. I mean, I don't know if any of us would acknowledge to a serial killer that being a serial killer is a happy way of life. For example, obviously there are going to be tolerable boundaries that we have to draw. But in any case, there is one last question, if you don't mind. I know it's growing late in India and probably people are hungry. It's overtime for lunch, but we're going to be back at 1. If anybody wants to dash off now and have lunch or do some yoga or ask, who you are for 50 minutes, please do. We're going to resume at 1 p.m. sharp with Massimo and Sky on Stoicism. But Bala, there is one more question from David Wolf, which may be an interesting one. And if you don't mind, I'll just pose it to you on David's behalf. He asks, is the contemporary view of reincarnation for example, or reinforced by the empirical work of Dr. Ian Stevenson's research reaching India and considered important. Ian Stevenson, of course, about 30 or 40 or 50 years ago from the University of Virginia, published a book called 20 Cases Suggestive of Reincarnation. And he did some very careful scientific psychological research and determined in these 20 cases that the people who were experiencing past lives in their current memory were not, what they call kleptomaniacs. They weren't remembering things from other people's lives. They were knowing things that they couldn't possibly have encountered before when historical research was done into the lives that they purportedly remembered. There were no causal connections established between their present existence and those other lives. So these cases were suggestive of reincarnation as a potential explanation for what these people were remembering. Yeah. And also we have cases in the West now of doing hypnosis. Regression into past lives has come, to the surface. So what does India, do you make of anything of this? Is there any penetration of this into Indian culture?
Yeah, that's a very interesting area. In fact, I haven't gone into this area at all, so I may not be able to sufficiently respond to this question. But what I see is when it comes to reincarnation is used in terms of the God. Okay, so God comes in different forms into the world and tries to save people. That's save the good. That's how reincarnation is understood. But otherwise, individuals also take rebirth. Okay, rebirth is different from reincarnation, and normal beings, okay, take rebirth, and rebirth is basically, as per the Indian conception, is rooted in theory of karma. Theory of karma is basically whatever actions that you do, they accrue their own. As you sow, so you reap, right? So your actions would accumulate, accumulate your their results, and you have to face the consequences of your actions. And if you fail to complete them in this life, probably they would take you to the next life as well. And that is how Indian conception of punarjanma or rebirth is understood. I'm not familiar with Stevenson's work, so probably I may not be able to respond sufficiently. I'm sorry for that.
Well, you already have responded, and I mean, oh, Rick, thank you for the correction. It's cryptomnesia, that is remembering someone else's life because you read a history, you know, and got confused with your own past. That's cryptom. I was fishing for the word, Rick. I knew it started with a C or a K, but cryptomnesia is the term. Bala, it doesn't surprise me in the least. I mean, and I have many friends, as you know, many friends in India for a long time, and no one's ever questioned the need for any scientific research into reincarnation. I mean, rebirth is taken as a given thing, yes, in Indian philosophy. So it's not as if someone needs a Western scientist to corroborate it. But you know, Westerners being skeptical, of course, always looking for evidence of these things. Listen, thank you so much for sharing this really rich presentation. You've given us all great food for thought. And we will obviously keep in touch as we go forward. Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Bala.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. It's great to see you.
And I'm hoping very much that you'll include some of this when you're in the journal that you're editing. You have an introduction that includes a lot of this talk?
Yeah, I would do that, Ivana, definitely.
Great.
Thank you so much, friends. I would. Yeah, I think my mail address is available. Please do write to me if you have any questions so that we can get in touch and correspond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bala. Be well. We'll speak again soon. Yeah, Bala's email is in the program. Okay. And yeah, I think he's also up on our website now too. You have a profile up there, so you can find him through APPA. Okay. Thanks again. And to our Indian colleagues who've joined us as well. I see Majulika and Sudeep and Sujanya and some others. So thank you also for joining us from India. I know it's getting late there, so we'll let you go. All right, everyone. It's been a wonderful morning. Oh, and Sushitra too. Thank you. So it's been a wonderful morning, and we will resume at 1 sharp New York time. That's just over 45 minutes. So please do have some lunch or take a walk or do whatever you need. Get up and breathe. Do something that you need to do. And we'll see you all at 1 o'clock sharp. Okay? Thank you so much.